Now, people will like, wait a minute, that sounds very familiar to another unit that came out this year, and that is LRSDR Super Saiyan Blue Evolution Vegeta. Now, I don't think they're actually the same unit by any means at all. One's 30% to super, one's 50% to super, but and also at the same time, one's not orb reliant. All they gotta do is get hit 4 times, and they're guaranteed 4 additional normals at the very least, before also getting the 50% chance for each one of those to be a super, and of course, he stacks and etc. The Broly is significantly better than Vegeta and has way more guarantees in his kit than this Vegeta. Vegeta relies on way too much in his kit in order to be good. First of all, he relies on Key Sphere orb changing so that he can get up to 10 orbs to get his normals that become a 30% chance to super up to 5 times. But here's what's annoying to me, by the way. Here's what really annoys me with this kit now, is in the same year, they release a unit that can do 4 normals. That's a high chance of becoming super, so they can super up to 6 times in a turn. And then they released this Evolution Blue Vegeta, who also can super 6 times in a turn. And it annoys, 7 times in a turn. And then it annoys me because, like, what's the difference between this unit and Broly? There's literally no difference, except for the fact that, yes, Vegeta does get stipulations for doing supers. But if that was a high chance to super, this unit would be so much better. There's more to his kit than just that would make him better, but that would make him so much better. But he still does need 10 orbs to be even close to being good. And of course, he gets 7% damage reduction for every attack or form. So, you know, he gets his damage reduction post super, which sucks. But for every attack performed, which means you got to get up to 10 orbs to max out the amount of attacks you can get in a turn, which means he can get up to 49% damage reduction in the turn, along with this 30% damage reduction there. And he can get another 30% damage reduction there. So he can get up to, he could get up to 109% damage reduction if everything is up. If not, then you're only getting up to 79% damage reduction, which is decent, I guess. With AGL Super Saiyan 4 Goku, it's pretty good to get up to 89% damage reduction, but he just relies too much on orbs that rely on then becoming super attacks from the attacks gained from gaining those orbs. So to me, I don't know, it's just kind of finicky to me. Like, this unit just definitely needed to be significantly better, especially as an anniversary headliner part 1, and just relies too much on 30% chances to super to be good. All right, next we have TEQ DBS Gogeta. Now, his is way less RNG reliant than these other two because, first of all, he does need orbs, and yes, he does need 10 orbs in order to be good. So his situation is somewhat very similar to Vegeta's in terms of the orb department. But here's some things. 1, his active skill changes the entire field to tech orbs. And man, Vegeta wishes he had an active skill at all. And then 2 is Frieza. On the turn, you can exchange your Gogeta, changes all key spears from AGL and SCR to Tech, and then he changes Fizz or Int key spears to Rainbow. So he basically creates a field where you have Tech, Rainbow, and either Fizz or Int, right? That's it. That's a pretty solid board to have with this Gogeta, and it just allows you to get that 100% dodge from the 10 orbs very easily. And the reason why I mentioned that is because Gogeta's kit is this. He has a 50% chance to dodge, and then he gets 5% dodge for every key spear obtained. So if you get 10 key spears, he has 100% to dodge. But not only that, for every 5 key spears he obtains, he launches an additional super attack. Unlike Vegeta, he has a guaranteed super attack. And if you get if he's the active and you fill the whole board with orbs, he gets up to 4 additional super attacks guaranteed. He has the additional super attack guaranteed just from having his regular super attack. And then if you get hit potential, you have 6 super attacks. This unit is very good. And then on top of that, he gets a 10% attack for every orb he obtains, and then he gives 10% defense to allies once he attacks per orb he obtains, on top of the 50% defense he already gives. So what's the RNG on this unit? It sounds like a ton of guarantees. So what are his, RNG? So I think that his RNG is the dodge, right? Because there are going to be turns where you don't have the active, you don't have Frieza's orb changing, right? You're just having a normal turn for this guy, and a normal turn for this guy could end up, you only get 5 orbs, so you only have 75% dodge. So then relying on dodge here, right? So you rely on orb changing, you rely on the orb falls, you rely on your dodge outside of active and outside of the Frieza changing orb turn, which is pretty significant for this unit, which is the reason why I put him on this list. It's way less RNG reliant than what the Broly and Evolution Blue Vegeta go through, but I do think it's something to note. All right, I'll talk about PHY Glorio. His is also very similar to the situations of Broly and the Super Saiyan Blue Evolution Vegeta. I think it's just something to note. I mean, it's not as bad, of course, but how he works is he gets 30% attack for every super attack he does within the turn, and then he also gets a 10% up to 30% to super within the turn. So, but here's how he works: is he has a 70% chance to super in slot 2 and 3, and he has his super, of course, and then he has a 50% chance to super as well. So he's a dodge unit, right? He's a dodge unit. He can get up to 80% dodge for super attacks, by the way. It can't be normals. He gets 10% dodge for every super attack he does. So if you want him to be impressive, you do need him to get his 3 super attacks in the turn. He's guaranteed 1 off of his normal super attack. Then you have 2 other chances in slot 2 or 3 to get the other super attack, and then you have the hidden potential one to do that as well, and then he has a guaranteed super attack when he does 3 supers in a turn. So essentially, if you get the 80%, you're guaranteed another super attack in the turn. So you get the 60, you have the guaranteed super. Then let's just say you get the great chance to super, right? The slot 2 or 3 great chance, you get that and you get that. So that's a 2 supers, you're at 70%, and then you pull off the hidden potential super, which is very possible. So you pull off the hidden potential super, and then you get your 3 supers that way. That gives you the 80% to dodge and all the other greatness with it as well. But there are turns where you just won't flip the coin right, and you will only super once or twice that turn, and then you get 20% dodge, and you don't get all the great benefits, and you still have 70% chance of dodge. I mean, that's still good, but Glorio's in bigger problems without supering, because for every attack performed, and then he also gains the 30% attack and defense for every the 50% attack and defense for every super attack he performs, along with the guaranteed stacks on top of that in the turn. So it just, a lot of things depend, right? If you get all of the supers, let's say you do not his intro turn, but let's just say the next turn, right? So let's say get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 supers, because he can do 5 supers. So he does 5 supers in the turn. He can have a multiplicative 250% attack and defense for the supers, and then 150% multiplicative as well. So he has 400% multiplicative attack and defense, and then he gets the 5 super attack buffs, so 250% attack and defense, plus the guaranteed buffs of 45% attack and 30% defense on top of that. He can look very impressive by the time those turns end, but you also can bring it all the way down to 1 super attack, and you only get half of that stuff. Now, he still gets the 400% multiplicative, or I guess that would be 350% because you don't get the other super, but you get 350% multiplicative because for every attack performed, he still gets attack and defense 50%. But it's just more so the super attacks allow him to proc a super attack effect, and also increases his dodge chance and increases his attack by the well, just for him to look way more impressive on that turn. So again, just kind of like I mentioned earlier with Broly and Vegeta, he can look very incredible or he could suck. It just depends on what it looks like with him, depending on if he gets supers or not. All right, let's talk about Diamond Vegeta. I think his is a lot more simpler to understand why he's RNG reliant, but we should talk about it, of course. Now, the thing about Diamond Vegeta that makes him so RNG reliant is the fact that his stats vary on if he gets attacked or not, and if he gets supered or not. That's pretty much it, but you gotta remember, outside of his first turn, he does not have the scouter, right? All he has is his, you're just kind of guessing. He has to go slot 1, so that does help out, but when he gets 200% attack, defense when receiving an attack, that's not really the issue. The thing is, he gets super attack buffs. After receiving attack, he launches an additional super attack. After receiving a super attack, he launches an additional super attack. He gets 33% attack and defense for 3 turns for every super he does in the turn. So if he does 4 supers, he gets 132% attack and defense for 3 turns. That's great. You do that twice, he's at 264% attack and defense. For a unit that has high levels of damage reduction, that's what you're looking for. But the issue is, same time, if you do only 2 super attacks or 1 super attack, you're only having 66% to 132% attack and defense for 2 turns of stacks, essentially. And that's not really what you want for a unit that has high levels of damage reduction, because that 132% attack and defense gap between the two is significant. Right, every single defense you add to a unit changes drastically how they tank, because damage reduction scales off of the boss, right? So the boss does 20 million super, right? He has a 20 million super, but you have 70% damage reduction, right? That goes down to, let's just say, let's swap the calculator. Let's do it. So I have it up right now. Let's do a 20 mil super, all right? And we'll make sure it's 70% reduced. That's a 6 mil super. Okay, that goes down to a 6 mil super. Let's say Vegeta had only 1 million defense, right? He would take 5 million attack from that. But if he had, 5.4 million defense, he's taking 6 mil. Now you can say, like, well, isn't that just the equation for every unit? Yes, it is. But units with lower levels of damage reduction are just going to take significantly more from that, right? If you have a 50% damage reduction, you're taking 10 mil super from that, and you're gonna need 9 million more defense versus only needing 5 million more defense. Damage reduction reduces the work done significantly. And keep in mind, by the way, a unit needs 4 million more defense than this Vegeta does to tank a 20 mil super, because of 20% damage reduction. So keep that in mind, right? For the gap of 20 million damage reduction, of 20% damage reduction and a 20 mil attack is 4 million defense. So with him having 70% damage reduction, he only needs incremental amounts of defense for you to see a significant difference. Let's use a more realistic example, right? So let's say it's a 10 mil super. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing a bunch of those right now, and he does that. He's only taking that for 3 mil. Well, let's just say he only has 600k defense. He's taking that for 2.4 mil. But let's say with him fully built up, and let's just say, like, without, that's with the 66% defense, right? But he has in the 264% defense, so you multiply his defense by, well, you wouldn't multiply it by 4, but it would be something similar to that. Let's just say it is multiplied by 4. You go from taking 2.4 million defense to taking it for 600k. Like, that's the difference with this unit. And when it comes to high level supers and what he can do, it drastically changes his defensive levels depending on if he gets supered, if he doesn't get supered, if he does take an attack in slot 1, if he doesn't take an attack in slot 1 before he supers. A lot of those factors matter for this unit, and so his RNG is if they're going to super him before he attacks, is he going to get hit before he attacks, right? And those things will allow this unit to shine a bunch more if he continues to super like crazy. But if he doesn't, he's not that impressive, which is why you have to consider a lot of things for this unit. All right, the Int GT Goku and Fizz GT the Int GT Vegeta and the Fizz GT Goku are pretty self-explanatory on why they're on this list. It all comes down to orbs for these two, right? And you can include other units on this list, like the TEQ Bojack movie Gohan and stuff like that, right? Really, any unit that requires orbs to be good could definitely be on this list. You're like, okay, well, why is that RNG though? Well, these guys are orb changers, right? So in order for them to be significantly good, they need to change, orbs in order to get the orb field to go their way. And for example, the Vegeta, he gets 3% damage reduction per orb he gets. He gets 30% defense per orb he gets. And by the way, that's multiplicative defense. So you get 10 orbs, that's multiplicative 300% defense. He also gets guard after 3 orbs. He gets an additional super after 5 orbs, right? So there's a few factors that come into this and why it's significant for him to get a crap ton of orbs. He gets 20 orbs. He has 60% damage reduction, 600% multiplicative defense. He has guard, right? Like, he's going to look very impressive on that turn. And with that drastic difference, depending on how many orbs he gets, is the reason why you have to throw him under the RNG Reliant units, because him at 20 key spheres is significantly different than him at 10 key spheres, and him at 10 key spheres is significantly different than him at 5 key spheres, just because of the effects that he gets per orb he gets, right? So, I mean, this unit is very good, don't get me wrong, especially the Vegeta especially is very good, but you have to consider the fact that this unit does struggle when you don't get a ton of orbs, and it does rely on how the key spears change, you know, based on their passive, or if you have another key spear orb changer next to him, you know, is the orbs going the way you want them to get that 10 plus orbs on that turn so Vegeta can look impressive, or are you only getting 5, 6, 7, 4, 3 that doesn't make him look good at all? Then that variation is the reason why we have to throw him on this list. All right, finally, the last unit I want to talk about today is the TEQ DBS 2 Gohan, which I just realized it's pretty funny because I just realized that actually I was talking about GT Goku and Vegeta earlier, and I was like, oh, and there's Gohan, but I didn't really mention him too much. And then I was like, wait a minute, I did have him on this list. So yeah, Gohan's on this list as well for the very same reason as why GT Goku and GT Vegeta are on this list, and that's because the Gohan is orb reliant, and it just drastically changes how he performs. He also does have orb changing, which is also the reason why he's on here. Not only like orb hungry units, right, does not mean you're RNG reliant, but a unit that relies on his orb changing for his orbs to shine, you know, that's what we can consider that. Because it's like, what if you're orb reliant and the board shows up, like, it doesn't matter, like you control the orb board minus, like, you know, of course, turn 1, right? Turn 1 the orbs will matter, like how they generate and stuff, sure. But if you're an orb changer, right, you change your orbs you know, on whenever you enter, then yes, there's RNG to that as well, right? Like, did you change the proper orbs so that you can get the ideal board you're looking for, right? He gets 10% attack and defense per orb that he obtains, and it just changes how drastically he can look. I mean, 100% attack and defense is gonna look different than 50% attack and defense, and it's a complete different shift, especially because it is a you know, just stats, and he has a lot of multiplicative stats. So, you know, 50% defense versus, you know, 100% defense for something that is multiplicative can change drastically. If you go from 100k defense to 200k defense off of just 5 more orbs, he can go from, you know, let's just say he has 200%. I'm not even looking at his kit for a second. Let's just say that's 200% defense when attacking, right? That means it goes from 100k to 300k defense. But if he has 200k defense for the 5 extra orbs, he goes from 200k to 600k defense. So the multiplicative defense matters a ton for this unit, and which is the reason why we have to throw him on this list, because of the orbs that he gets has such a drastic change in his performance, and he orb changes. So that the way the orbs change for him, the RNG can roll really well for him or really badly for him, which can drastically change how well he looks. All right, finally, we're going to look at any dodge unit not named the STR Blues. I think it's important for us to mention that because I do think the STR Blues do rely on dodge, right? They do in certain fights, but in most fights, or in certain fights, they don't. Because it just depends on, you know, how hard the boss hits and stuff like that. But more so, the point I'm trying to get across is that if a unit is dodge or die, they are RNG reliant, right? They rely on the 50%, the 70%, the 80%, whatever. They rely on that percentage to stay alive. The Blues don't necessarily deal with that, but there are bosses they can get one shot by. Anyways, more so, the point I am trying to get across is the fact that if you're a dodge unit and you need to dodge to live, you are RNG reliant. There's many units like that right now. The Fizz Broly Trio. There is MUI Goku, TEQ Goku, SCRI Goku. You know, a lot of these units don't have a ton of defense and rely heavily on their dodge in order to stay alive. And after playing this new meta, I realized I don't like that at all, especially when attempt limits are in factor as well. Now, it didn't matter too much when we were playing like special battles and stuff like that, because you have infinite attempts and you can kind of wait out a bad dodge string. Like, you could have 5 runs in a row and you're just not getting that dodge, even though you've been there, you know, like seeing the 70% dodge, like it's 80% dodge, come on, what we're doing, and like 5 times in a row that fails, and then eventually you kind of get back on track. But it's just clearly something we have to bring up, that dodge units are RNG reliant, and I didn't want to mention every single like dodge unit by name, so of course I'm going to be talking about them as a mass whole because it's the same concept altogether. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys agree or disagree with the units on this list? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps the channel a ton, but I will say, only subscribe if you're considering watching more content in the future. Now, if you guys enjoyed the content, of course, make sure to click the first link in the description below. It's going to be to all of my Dokkan Battle voice content. And then my second one's to all the Dokkan Battle content videos in general. If you guys love the text videos, they're in there as well. And there's a link, a third link in the description below, which is my G Fuel code. If you guys want to go ahead and use that code, or click the link in the description to go look for G Fuel products yourself, it helps out the channel and it supports the channel a ton. I get a commission, of course, clearly, but you also will get to save 20% off of any G Fuel order. So look around, there's many flavors to try, including Dragon Ball flavors. So if you guys want to look around and find stuff, go ahead and feel free. I do love me that raspberry creamsicle. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.